Our next presenter is Austin Potts. He will be presenting on the importance of preservation to local agencies. Austin Potts is the pavement management engineer at Polk County Board of County Commissioners in Bartow, Florida. He has previously worked at Econ South LLC, as well as an earlier stint with Polk County and with Brooks and Madden Inc. Austin is also a veteran with 5 years of service in the U.S. Navy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Austin Potts. I'm the pavement manager here in Polk County in Central Florida. I'd like to thank you for your time today, allowing me to present. My presentation is going to be on the importance of preservation to local agencies, which falls right in line with today's theme of local agency approaches. So I'm going to start off with a definition of pavement preservation, and this was taken directly from the National Center for Pavement Preservation website. Their definition is a cost-effective set of practices that extend pavement life and improve safety and motorist satisfaction while saving public tax dollars. So the focus of my presentation is going to be on the 4 key elements in this definition, those being establishing cost-effective practices, extending pavement life, improving safety and motorist satisfaction, and saving public tax dollars. So over the next couple slides here, I'm just going to give a quick run through of Polk County and what our program looks like. As you can see here, we're the 4th largest county by land area in the state of Florida. And as a visual, you can see the state of Rhode Island next to Polk County on the right-hand side of the screen. As far as our road network goes, we currently manage 2,529 centerline miles of paved roads. So where does that put us? We actually have more miles than the state of Hawaii, Rhode Island, DC, and New Jersey, and fall right in front of Vermont and Massachusetts. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a pie chart. And this is a breakdown of our network by functional classification. It's kind of interesting. You'll see that it's about a 50-50 split between local residential segments and collector segments. We also have some small percentages of arterials and local commercial roads. Circling back to pavement preservation and some of the things we've done here in Polk County to focus on pavement preservation. In the past, prior to 2015, our program traditionally did mill inlay and overlay projects with an annual contract. The entire budget was allocated to those 2 treatments, and that allowed us to treat 70 to 90 centerline miles per fiscal year. Since 2015, we've added a separate contract for preventative and recycling treatments. The addition to that contract, we'll talk through some of the treatments on the next slide. That preventative maintenance contract has allowed us to bump up the number of miles treated to 120 to 150 miles per year. And then on the bottom there, you'll see really the big disadvantage was we were using those more intensive and costly treatments on local roads, which ultimately reduced the number of lane miles we could get to each year. So as I just mentioned, and I think some of the other presenters have mentioned today, we had to expand our toolbox and add some preservation treatments. Here's a list of things we added and some of the expected pavement life extension ranges that we look to get out of those. I won't get too much into the weeds on these, but I will say that with the 2 on the left, rejuvenation and microsurfacing, we get a lot of bang for our buck out of those 2 treatments. It really helps to increase the number of miles we're able to treat each fiscal year. I've also got on the bottom right-hand side, cold in place recycling and full depth reclamation. Those are definitely on the reconstruction side of the spectrum, but those are treatments that we added with this contract as well. Again, increasing the number of tools we have available to use. This chart here shows what our program has looked like basically over the last decade. The teal line shows the number of miles we've been able to treat starting in fiscal year 2012, 2013. You'll note the blue arrow at the bottom, the first one at the 2015 year mark. That shows where we implemented or added the new contract with preservation treatments in our tool bag. Just prior to that, we were treating about 74 miles per year. And you can see that line increases up to the current fiscal year where we basically doubled the number of miles treated. This year, we're looking at about 148 to 150 miles treated. You'll see there was a dip there in 2018-19. It's really an outlier. We weren't able to use a portion of one of our rehab contracts that year. But you will notice we were still able to treat a significant number of miles, being that we had the preservation contract available. And then also on this slide, you can see our budget over that same time frame. It was relatively unchanged up until fiscal year 18-19. we implemented the use of an analytical tool, Agile Assets, to further our program. And through Agile Assets, we were able to justify an increase to our resurfacing budget. We jumped from 15 million to 18 million a year, which is where we're at today. As far as the implementation of Agile Assets goes, that was the second big change that we made to focus on preservation and expanding our toolbox. Prior to 2018, we managed our program basically with Excel spreadsheets and using a worst first approach. We also used Infor to help manage our inventory, work orders, costs, but it didn't have any analytic capabilities. Since 2018, we've been using Agile Assets, and that's allowed us to create degradation curves based on historical data and decision trees for surface types and functional classifications. So once we implemented Agile Assets, we had to take a look and see how an optimized solution with preservation treatments compared to our prior approach of worst first. And of course, our goals with the implementation of Agile Assets were to improve the network condition, minimize costs to taxpayers, maximize benefit to the traveling public. All three of those are in line with the key elements we described in the definition on the first slide. So the setup to compare the two scenarios, we used a $15 million budget across the network. So that was $15 million per year across an 8-year span. And then we ran the analysis in Agile Assets for both scenarios and compared the results. So here on this first comparison slide, you're looking at what the average network PCI did from year 1 to year 8, those being 2020 and 2027. The worst first, shown in yellow, starts where we are today, roughly around a 69 or 70 PCI, average PCI score, and ends at year 8 at a PCI score of 39. And then the teal line shows the optimized solution, which ended at the 8-year mark with a PCI score of 47. So a difference of 8 points over the 8 years. Now, both of these lines show that the PCI score is constantly decreasing across the 8-year time frame, meaning our program's underfunded. And this is kind of a great visual aid to use when discussing what the program looks like moving forward and the condition of your road network with upper management staff. So this slide's really just a summary of the previous chart, but the takeaway here is that the maximum benefit to the traveling public would be realized under the optimized solution, which helps to reiterate the importance of preservation narrative. And there's a number of software tools out there. I know I'm discussing Agile Assets today, but so far Agile has been a great fit for our program. This next comparison slide here, we're looking at backlog treatment costs across the 8-year range. You'll notice the yellow line, the worst first scenario, ends year 8 with a backlog of roughly $267 million. And the optimized solution with preservation treatments ends at year 8 with $239 million in backlog. So if the optimized solution were chosen, realized savings of nearly $28 million across that 8-year stretch. And here's another comparison slide. In this one, we're looking at what the condition status would be at year 8 for each scenario for the network. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the optimized solution. It ends the scenario with 2,166 lane miles in poor condition, 1,388 at risk, 1,460 miles in good condition. On the right-hand side, you'll see the worst first results. It ends the scenario with 2,446 miles in poor condition, 1,433 at risk, and 1,135 in good condition. So the takeaways here are that the optimized solution allows a 28% increase in the number of miles in good condition over the 8-year span. At risk is relatively the same, and the number of poor miles is reduced by 13% over the worst first scenario. One final comparison slide. This shows what the total number of miles treated for each scenario would look like. The teal line again shows the optimized solution with a sum of 910 miles treated over an 8-year span, and that is roughly 36% of the entire network. With the worst first approach, it would be nearly 641 miles down around 25% of the total network treated. So the difference there is 42% with the optimized solution being the obvious choice. So moving a little bit deeper into Agile assets, previously we ran the $15 million per year scenario for 8 years. We wanted to look at what would happen if the budget changed. What if we had a significantly underfunded budget, or what if we had an adequately funded budget? So next we're going to look at those two scenarios. We already have the 15 million per year. We'll look at a 10 million per year significantly underfunded scenario, as well as an adequately funded 35 million per year scenario. So here's the PCI results of those three. We've already talked about the 15 million per year yellow line. The significantly underfunded $10 million budget puts us at a PCI score of 37 across that same 8-year span. And the $35 million budget per year maintains our PCI. So we start in that 70 range and into that 70 range. Also a good visual when discussing with upper management, what would it take to maintain the network today? And another comparison of those three budget scenarios here, again, we've already talked about the yellow line with a backlog for the $15 million per year budget of $239 million. The significantly underfunded scenario, $10 million per year, would end with a backlog of $300 million at the year 8 mark. And the adequately funded ends with $36.5 million in backlog across that time frame. So if you multiply out those budgets across all 8 years and then tack on the backlog, you basically end up with an ROI of $42.5 million by choosing the adequately funded $35 million per year budget. So with our second big change as a local agency towards focusing on preservation being the implementation of Agile assets, some of the additional benefits and features of the program included optimized budget utilization and future budget forecasting. We just showed some examples of those, as well as multi-year work plan generation. I know some of the other presenters have spoke about that as well. We in Polk County also generate a 5-year forecast. We use that as a base template for planning purposes, and we share that with upper management staff as well as the public. And we're also able to manage our backlog, which we again just showed on the previous slide. And then of course this next bullet, any of the managers out there, you know, you get the what ifs constantly. Agile is a great tool, analytical tool to use to pop in those scenarios and then generate some visual aids to use as talking points with your chain of command that's asking those questions. So in closing, this slide identifies some of the highlights of today's presentation, those being the key elements that define the importance of pavement preservation, which are establishing cost-effective practices, extending pavement life, improving safety, and saving public tax dollars. And also the two major steps that Polk County took to increase focus on preservation were adding a separate contract for preventative and recycling treatments in 2015 to increase the tools in our toolbox, and implementing Agile assets to improve our analytic capabilities. As a result, we've been able to increase the number of miles treated per year, maintain the average network PCI, justify an increased pavement management budget, and reduce the number of backlog segments year over year. And that's basically the conclusion. I appreciate you guys' time today. My email address is here. If anybody would like to reach out to me with any questions, please feel free to do so. Thank you.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.